So thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to our interview on the Ethiopian crisis here at the Pan-African Leadership Center. My name is Salome Mwirore, a freelance journalist based in Kenya. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sal Mwirore, and we are streaming live on the United States of Africa Pan-African Leadership Center channel and on Twitter via Alebulan _ and LinkedIn Live on the United States of Africa LinkedIn page. Today we'll be discussing the Ethiopian conflict, and we are pleased to have with us Ghidey Zeratsion, who is one of the founders of TPLF, to give us his perspective on the Ethiopian crisis. Welcome to our studio. I do not know whether I pronounced your name correctly, but I stand corrected. And give us a brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Thank you for having me. My name, as you said, is Ghidey Zeratsion. I am one of the founders of TPLF. I'm living now in Norway. I have completed my studies in computer science in Norway. But at this time, I am a retired person, actually. But I have not retired from the politics of Ethiopia. So I'm still active, engaged in Ethiopia. Thank you for having me. That's what I could say about me.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. We ask you to send in your question on all our handles, and we will be able to pose them to our guest, and we will be able to tackle the Ethiopian crisis. Let's go to the first question. What do you think will take to end the conflict in Ethiopia?
Well, to end the conflict in Ethiopia, first of all, we have to know what were the causes, how it happened. I think from the Western media, we don't see what the cause is, how it happened, and why we are at this situation now. I think one of my reactions in my a short article I wrote a year ago, that was what I was trying to explain to the international media and interested international groups as well. What was the cause for this conflict? The cause is, you know, in 2018, when the government of the Ethiopian government, led by TPLF, was pushed out of power by popular uprising. Then the TPLF retreated and went to what it believes is its base, to Tigray. Now, after going to Tigray, it was planning to come back to power through any means. And they were mobilizing their people, actually, based on hate speeches and mainly on a racist type of mobilizing the Tigrayan people, as if they were the only victims in this process of change, reforms in Ethiopia for which these problems have been already created by TPLF itself. You know, when TPLF was in power for 28 years, it has been divisive, it has been polarizing the contradictions among the different peoples, ethnic groups, nationalities, regions, and all these things. And then the situations that were created immediately after it was pushed out of the power was a kind of chaos, you can say. There was conflict everywhere, conflict among regions, displacement. And that has affected the Tigrayan people as well. So, but they were trying to present it as if it happened to the Tigrayans alone. So they have been campaigning in Tigray. Not only that, then mobilizing the people to fight against the Amharas, against the central government. And then they have been recruiting militias, special commandos, special militias. They have been showing a lot of parades in stadiums with big crowds, cheering crowds. This has been repeated many times to show their power. Then, of course, there has been some, they have been defying also orders from the government, from the court, and some decisions of the parliament as well. So at last, they have conducted their own election, and they declared there would not be any legal government in Ethiopia after September 30, just before they started the attack on the army. Well, different attempts were made to mediate this, to settle these things by mediation, but they rejected all. And then finally, on November the 3rd, they attacked the Northern Division. You can imagine the Northern Division is one of the well-equipped divisions in Ethiopia. And it has been in Tigray for many years, actually, as a defense with the conflict of, due to the conflict of Ethio-Eritrea war. Then, isolating the Tigrayans, I mean, picking out the Tigrayans in this division, the whole, from the lower rank to the upper rank, and coordinating their attack with the militias they have already trained. They took control of this division. They attacked it. They killed some. They took the weapons. Well-equipped army, they took the weapons. And some of them were escaped, but many were captured. Even after capturing them, they were parading them in a cheering crowd in Tigray. This is what they did. Then, what could a legal government do when such things happen? It has to react. This is actually treason. Then the Ethiopian government reacted, launched an attack on TPLF, and tried to take over Tigray. Then, immediately after this war started, TPLF had a wide media campaign. They had a well-established links from before when they were in power, 27 years. They have links with researchers, journalists, even some officials in some countries. Then they orchestrated the situation, and they tried to present to the world as if it is an ethnic cleansing from the central government. from Abiy's government.
So maybe
I was very much surprised by the Western media and the governments as well. Immediately, the reaction from the European Union Parliament. They were discussing this issue as ethnic cleansing and make decisions. In the United Kingdom, the same thing. In the Parliament, they never mentioned how this happened. So up till now, you never hear why this war was this war happened. You never hear about it. So I think coming back to your question, in order to solve this problem, we have to understand how it, in the first place, how it happened. That's what I am trying to explain here. Well, at present, yes, please.
So what is the actual problem between the TPLF and the Ethiopian government? What is the cause of all this conflict?
The main cause is that TPLF wants back into power by force. That's the whole problem. Now, it might have given different image or explanations to the external world, but that's the whole reason. So now, as you see it, just as we are, as it stands now, the TPLF has advanced to the neighboring regions in Amhara and in Afar. It has advanced close to Addis Ababa, I can call it, but it is not so close actually. But it has been, its aim was to topple down the government and form its own government. At this stage, this movement has been checked by popular uprisings, by popular patriots in Afar and in Amhara. The people of Ethiopia are very much mobilized. This is a question of sovereignty, a question of independence, the question of pride. So the whole people in Ethiopia is very much mobilized now, and their movement have been checked now. Now the things are reversing. Actually, as it is now, things are reversing. So what I think how this would be solved is, the first thing I could say is, there has been a lot of damage. They have been abusing people in Amhara. They have been looting. They have been killing people. They have raped women. All these things. There is hatred even in people against this organization. So what they should do, as I believe, to bring or settle this situation is, TPLF has to withdraw from areas where it has occupied now. Withdraw to Tigray and declare a ceasefire and ask for a negotiated settlement. That would be the only solution, I think.
So when you look at this particular situation, who in particular will be doing the negotiations, and from where will they be doing the negotiations? Some of these leaders from the TPLF are already in the bush.
Well, they are in Tigray capital now, in Mekelle, actually. They have control of Tigray. They claim that they have leaders. I think they have leaders who can show up for this kind of negotiations. They are commanding this army, and when they stop it, and they can declare they are ready for negotiations. If they don't do, I think things would take probably another direction. And so what I can see now is people they have been able to advance in Amhara and Afar because these people were not organized as they were. But now the people are organized, they are armed, and they are fighting now. So in accordance to strengths and even number of army, the Amharas are more than the Tigrayans, including the Afars are more than the Tigrayans. So it will be, it is unbalanced generally, you can say, and things are reversing now. And if they don't withdraw from these areas, I think it is a kind of downhill sliding for TPLF. That's what I see now.
Okay, so the African Union is has been fighting or saying that it wants to silence the guns. But looking at this conflict, do you think that the African Union is failing in its mandate of silencing the guns in this region, and in particular in Ethiopia?
Well, I think the African Union can help in silencing this fight, but it cannot stop it. It is the warring factions who can stop it. So if there is a will among the warring factions to stop this, then the African Union might play a positive role in mediating this question. As to the Western countries, I think they are not now a reliable partner in this process. They have been siding to TPLF for long, and they have been, in fact, putting pressure on Ethiopia, much pressure on Ethiopia. So I don't think they could be a neutral mediators here. But from Africa, I think they could play this positive role in mediation.
So just the other day, we had the U.S. military say that it was ready to respond to the Ethiopian conflict. Do you think this is the solution, or do we need homegrown solutions?
Well, I'm not sure if they have said they would intervene directly on in this conflict. What I understood was that if there is any problem which probably threatens their citizens, they might involve in securing the security of their citizenship. So if that is the case, of course, this has been orchestrated by themselves, that Addis Ababa was encircled, and they have warned their fellow people to leave Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, or else. This was a kind of psychological warfare, actually, from the Americans and the Western governments. But it was not true, and it was not such a threat for Addis Ababa at that situation. So, well, they have been orchestrating this, creating the image that Addis Ababa is encircled. The same day, they declared this in BBC, in CNN and other medias. They have been also showing a united front formed by TPLF with other regional groups in Addis Ababa. That was reported. That's the kind of image that now the central government is falling and some support is coming to Ethiopia. So this was a false message, false presentation of the situation in Ethiopia.
So what do you think is the... Okay.
So I don't think the Americans will intervene in this situation. They have no ground, they have no reason to intervene.
So maybe I'll go to the next question. What do you think is the impact of the Ethiopian conflict in the East Africa region?
Well, Ethiopia is a big country, an influential country. If Ethiopia is destabilized, definitely the rest of the Horn of Africa will be destabilized. It creates a problem. It could create, there are connections to these different kind of ethnic groups with their neighbors. So it could also expand to these areas. So it could destabilize the whole Eastern Africa. And if the stability of Ethiopia is maintained, I think there will be stability in the area too. So it would affect it very much. And I don't know why the West are also pushing for its disintegration at this time. They are supporting a party, a group that does not like the unity of Ethiopia, that would divide and rule according to ethnic groups to weaken the central government in Ethiopia. I don't know why the West is supporting such kind of movement. It goes, in the final analysis, it goes against their interest.
Okay, so looking at Ethiopia, it had really come out as an economic hub, a country that was really doing well across sub-Saharan Africa. So what do you think is the actual representation of this conflict, bearing in mind that there's minimum access to the ground, especially for international or foreign media houses, as well as media houses from local broadcaster? What is the actual representation of the actual situation?
We had an election recently in Ethiopia. It was a democratic, fair election. And we have never had such kind of an election in Ethiopia before. So we have elected our government. We have a popularly mandated state in Ethiopia now. So in terms of democratic rights, I think we have a better democratic rights now for media, for parties to operate in Ethiopia. I myself was engaged in some of the reforms in Ethiopia itself, and its democratic reforms. Have participated in the reforms of election rules and regulations and reforming its structures. So there is a lot of improvement in Ethiopia in terms of democratic rights. So I think, of course, the media law was reformed and the civic organization law was reformed. And anti-terrorist law was reformed. There are a lot of reforms in this country now. And it is in a positive direction. This has to be encouraged, actually. As to the economic situation, you can see we are at war. Then in war, there is always a loss. That's what we see. The economic growth is now hampered by this war itself. And even countries like America are imposing sanctions when you see it, I mean, at this situation. They have already shown that what side they are taking, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, so then maybe I'll give you my last question. Why is it that you left TPLF?
Well, I will not go in depth, but I can give the general answer for that. I mean, I have been in TPLF 10 years, and then in the last year of the 10th year, there was a formation of the Marxist-Leninist Party in the organization. Then, because some people want to take power in the organization, then they have used my political disagreements as an excuse or a pretext to to expel me from the party. So that's how I left. I had some political and ideological differences with the party. So that's why I left the organization. And I could have stayed. I mean, that it is a wide front. As a Democrat, I could have stayed there in the organization, but they didn't want me to stay there. They pushed me out. I'm lucky that I'm alive, at least, but I was pushed out in 1984. So that's how I left that organization.
Okay. I'll read some of the comments that we've gotten from our online platforms. Let us look at what Melody is saying. She says, Africa, my beginning, Africa, my end. I love my continent. Hello, hello. Africa, this is my home, my beginning. Africa, man, I love you guys. I love Africans and I love everything about Africa. I'm from South Africa, and that was an angle corner shower. Oh, okay. He's talking about the place where I am in. We also have Stephen Adams, who's watching from Ghana. Thank you very much for sending in your comments. So as we wind up the show, any last remarks that you have and anything that you want to talk about?
Thank you. Actually, I like your platform. This is Pan-Africanism. I mean, we are fighting against an organization which is divisive, let alone on Pan-Africanism. Even it is dividing Ethiopia into different regions and ethnic groups. So I think this is what we have to see with the perspective of TPLF. It is a divisive, polarizing organization. It has lived on that, and it is still doing that. Wherever it has an access or wherever it is, there is always antagonism among the people. It exploits this. It lives on exploiting such things. So this is what TPLF is actually. And I really wonder why the West have, of course, as I mentioned it before, all these West medias, some so-called experts, and some government members as well, had an economic interest with TPLF when they were in power. And that's why they set it into action when this war broke out. So, then maybe at the beginning it could be they were misled of this fake news. But why don't they learn and see themselves that situations are not the same? They have embassies in Ethiopia. They know this organization. Actually, most of the countries know this organization for 27 years in Ethiopia. They have been accusing it for being an undemocratic and for its human rights abuses. So why do they side now on this to this terrible organization? This is what I don't understand actually. Of course, this shows that we Africans have to stand on our own for our sovereignty, integrity, and unity. In fact, we are interfering in the sovereignty of Ethiopia. Imagine, there are other African countries as well who have been supporting this actively, like Sudan and Egypt, for their own sake. Sudan even went to the extent of attacking Ethiopia and annexing some area. The international community has said nothing about it. But the Americans are very much concerned that the Ethiopian government is trying to settle its problems within the regions. They are trying to administer in the regions of Ethiopia. Such is a double standard in the West. So I think we Africans have to understand that it's only we who could stand for our rights and for our sovereignty.
Okay, thank you very much. We've come to the end of this live interview. Thank you very much for accepting to come and speak to us and give us your perspective. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for your comments, and those that we've not read, we are going to read them next time. And I hope you'll have a good evening. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.